Welcome back to another edition of NFA, the segment here at Whale where we discuss different quote-unquote investing aspects of the NFT space. As the name suggests, this is not financial advice, and there's absolutely no substitute for doing your own research. I'm your host, Irus. I'm a recovering TradFi professional with a background in capital markets. In today's edition, we are joined by our very own Justin as we discuss Aavegotchis and their haunting allure. Some of you might not know this, but Justin is an avid Aavegotchi fan. In fact, he's the one that opened the door for me and first told me about incentivized auctions. Justin, say hello to the community.
Oh, thanks for that wonderful introduction. And as Eliscavia said, I'm Justin and happy to be here and share my totally not financial advice that people can choose to use as part of doing their own research on both Aavegotchis or NFTs.
All right, well, thank you for that. And like you heard it, this is just he's the gateway drug to get us into Aavegotchis. So I actually struggled to figure out the first question to ask you. So I'm going to cheat a little. I'll ask you two questions at once. How long have you been in Aavegotchis, and what brought you to it in the first place?
So I've had the stakes in Aavegotchi for probably 16 months now. That was initially in the realm of staking liquidity for the Ghost token pair. And then I got my first NFTs for it when Haunt 1 launched, which was around a year ago now. What brought me to it in the first place was that it was a game, and that was something that I feel is really lacking in the space, both back then and still now. And then as more details were available as they released that roadmap, things like that it would be entirely on-chain just made it more interesting for me. And like when I say entirely on-chain, that's everything from the stats, the graphics, padding and interacting with your Aavegotchis on-chain. The RNG uses Chainlink VRF for like provable randomization. So that in combination with a few friends that were also buying in, and that it just had a really fun lore that went with it, because it's basically like the DeFi crypto space, but in a game.
So the DeFi crypto elements, but in gamified form, were what hooked you in, plus some of the technical aspects. Now, I know you said RNG, VRF, and a bunch of other acronyms that the community might not be familiar with. So I know RNG is random number generator. Would you like to expand on some of the other acronyms you used?
So VRF is basically it's a product from Chainlink, which is verifiable random function, and it's basically on-chain provable randomness. So if you want to create a contract or something that has some sort of randomization to it, and you don't want to be accused of rigging it in a particular favor or something like that, if you use Chainlink, then you've got that provable randomness there. So.
Okay, so this is in essence to ensure that it's fair for the community and the users.
Yeah, it basically makes it fair. It proves, beyond doubt that, the developers don't have a secret wallet on the side that they're, secretly giving the best things to, which has, happened with some other PFPs and things like that. Where the rarest traits and things like that might go to a particular person. So it's just a way of keeping it and showing that it's actually really fair and that it's being distributed in that way.
Yeah, so for anyone that actually had any questions about that, now you know. Aavegotchis is ensuring that this is fair for all users. And Justin, so since you've basically seen the evolution of the ecosystem, you've witnessed it transitions from ghosts to land, new game elements that are being introduced. The first thing I'd like to ask is, one, how do you keep abreast of all these developments? How do you keep your finger on the pulse, as it were? And then secondly, I'd like to spend a little bit of time explaining what some of these elements are so that people that are just joining us and just learning about Aavegotchis can get a bit of a sense as to what this is all about.
You forgot wearables in that list as well. You can't have those ghosts floating around without looking awesome. So wearables are a thing in it as well. But yeah, sometimes it's a struggle to keep on top of it all. I'm in the Aavegotchi Discord for one, but often things like the weekly spaces conflict with other activities or sleep. So I also get some of the info from other Gotchi owners, Gotchi DGen group, and in touch with a couple of the team members directly as well.
So in essence, you quote unquote cheat by having direct access to the team members.
Not cheat, just get the information that's prudent and important to notice. Because I can't dedicate my entire life to Aavegotchi. I've got to split it between IRL and everything else that I do in my life. So getting basically a TLDR from people. So that helps immensely as well when you can't just spend a whole hour each time uh, sitting and listening to a Twitter Spaces or a Discord Spaces.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Now, for new users, you mentioned that there's the wearables, there's the actual ghosts, the land, new gameplay elements that are being introduced. So let's walk them through a little bit about what the ghosts actually are. I know that there's an element in there of a gate that's either open or closed in some other state that they might be in, and what that actually means, and what the ghosts actually have inside them.
Yeah, so the ghosts are summoned from a portal, and the portal is what was initially purchased from either auction for the second haunt, or from just getting in first in the first haunt. So each portal, yeah, it's got a randomized selection of Aavegotchis in there, but instead of just getting given one, like a lot of projects, you actually get to pick one of the randomized ones that are in there. So you can pick it, whether you want to go aesthetics or statistics or rarity or whatever it is you like. And then each one of them has what's called a spirit force in it, which is basically some DeFi collateral that gets locked into there. So through Aave, you lock in something like Bitcoin or USDC or something like that, and that gets stored in the actual Aavegotchi itself, and that's its spirit force. In the future, there will be expanded into the battling side of it, where that'll have some aspect to it. At the moment, there's no real benefit of going more or less, but at some point, if for whatever reason you've put what works out to be $100 of Bitcoin in when it started, and 5-10 years from now, that's worth $50,000 of Bitcoin. You can actually sacrifice your Aavegotchi and get that spirit force back out, and you get your collateral back. But you lose your Aavegotchi in the process. But the XP in that does get transferred to another Aavegotchi. So not everything is lost. It does serve a bit of a purpose.
So in essence, you lock up collateral in the ghost, and at some point the value of the ghost is in essence underpinned by the value of the collateral inside it, or do you not even see the collateral when you're looking to purchase?
You don't really see you can see what type it is, because the type of collateral dictates the type of Aavegotchi you get. It's got like a little symbol on it. Um, but you're talking a very small cost portion of it. Like even when it first launched, the portals were 100 ghost each, which at the time I think was about $100, like a dollar per ghost. And you're talking like $20 or $30 of collateral locked into it. So it's a very small minority of the total value of it. The majority of it comes from what the game is actually bringing.
Understood. So it's a small amount, and is that established by the protocol? There's a maximum amount that can be deposited, or is it always fixed per collateral type?
There's a minimum amount that is there, but there's no maximum amount. If you go over the minimum amount, you can always withdraw your collateral back down to the minimum amount, but you always have to have the minimum, which is fixed. So,
Got it. And as the owner of the ghost, you're allowed to put more in or take some out, you said.
yeah, so you can always put more in, and you can only take it out, but you can take it out, but only down to the minimum level, which is set per Aavegotchi. So, if it's, just for sake of argument, that it's $20 USDC, or it's through Aave, so it's AM USDC. You can put in $1,000 in there, and when you want to withdraw, you can bring it back, but you can never take it below that initial 20 USDC.
Understood. And is there any sort of differentiation or benefits to having different types of collateral? So USDC, I'm assuming some of them have, like you mentioned, Bitcoin, maybe Ethereum, maybe some other collateral type, maybe even Ghost. Are there any sort of benefits or different attributes associated with the collateral locked in within the Ghost?
At the moment, just color and the logo, but I'm sure that that's going to have some sort of integration in the future once that sort of thing's established more in the game. So,
okay, so no utility yet, but
coming
possibility of utility in the future.
soon. Yeah, I mean, it's very largely DAO driven. So basically, it's one of the most avid communities and DAOs that I've seen in the space, and the community behind and the proposals that behind it are just never ending, and the team is really good with following through on those as well. So that sort of thing, I think, will have something in the future, but I'm not too sure what. It's just been a slow evolution and rollout as they're adding, instead of waiting for 3 years for a game to be released, they release a little bit after the first month, and then gradually tacking more and more things on. So but we're going to see some gameplay with the land at the end of this month. So
okay, so let's speak a little bit more about land. As I mentioned earlier, you are the person that got me into looking at Aavegotchis in the first place when you mentioned that the land was being auctioned in something called an incentivized auction. I'd like to kind of spend a little bit of time explaining this to the community, because when I first saw an incentivized auction, it kind of blew my mind.
yeah, so it's something that not a lot of people are aware of or have seen before. So it's very different, and for those, I mean, in a nutshell, it's basically the difference between the last bid and the bid that you place. If you get outbid, you get a portion of that back. So, and there's a minimum increment. So, say the first bid is 0 when you're starting, and then you want to place a 100 ghost bid. It might be a 10% cashback sort of thing. So, if you get outbid, then you'll get 10 ghost back, even though you haven't won anything. So there's really nothing. So it encourages people to sit there and bid rather than just being really passive, because they've got the incentive to bid, because even if they get outbid, they've still got something that they get out of it. So,
and then sometimes you just wind up with land parcels by accident.
Yeah, which I think happened with you, didn't it?
Yep, I wound up with a parcel of land because I was hoping to be outbid and I didn't, but I'm not too upset because I needed land in there anyway.
Yeah. So I mean, admittedly, for me, I struggled a bit with the land side of things when it first released, because there was nothing to kind of compare compare prices and what value it should be assigned to it, because there was nothing like that existed already. Whereas with the Haunt 2, I had the price and the market value of the Haunt 1 portals to kind of go by and give a gauge. So my intention with both of those was to get in and win a certain portion of them and lose a certain portion, so that I benefit both ways. So
I'm going to put up the map to see if you can provide a little bit of color for the community, because even for me looking at it now, and I've spent a tiny bit of time trying to understand it, it's still just very confusing. So this is what the map looks like, and wondering if you can sort of provide a little bit of at least rules of thumb, or at least a quick way to have someone navigate this.
That's only actually a very small portion of the map. That's only the Citadel. If you go to the, let me see if I can pull it up. There's a full map. I would have pulled it up if I had thought of that in advance. But yeah, there's a full map that's there, and here we go. And that one that you've got up is only the Citadel portion of it. So that's the main part or the launching part of it. They're doing the game over a few chapters, and the Citadel is basically a part where it's like a safe zone where you can't get attacked by liquidators like out in the rest of the world. So
having land in the Citadel is considered let's call it a benefit.
yeah, so you've got that benefit of not being attacked. The part that you're seeing in the middle with the 4 lines and circles coming into it, that's the Great Portal. So that has a tie-in with their burn mechanism. It's kind of works like a treasury part there as well. And ties in with their burn mechanism for their tokens, because there are more tokens in the actual game than just the ghost token. The ghost is more of the governance and purchasing token, whereas in the game there will be the tokens for building things, that sort of thing. So,
okay, so if you have a link to the bigger map, I'd be more than happy to pull it up and show the community. But in essence, since I wound up with 2 parcels in here, what you're telling me is that hold on to those, that it has the benefit, it has attributes that outside of here aren't available.
yeah, absolutely. And within that area as well, they broke it down into districts. So one of my, this whole area is basically in a eugenesis area, and so I figured that would, talking 5 years or something in the future, that will sit there and have more of a value. But within there as well, like I can see you zooming in now, you'll see that there's a grey border around, which is like the inner walls. No, that's a road just to the left of that a little more. Yeah.
Okay.
No, yeah, that bit there. That's your inner walls. And I figured that ones that are closer to the center, like most things, would end up seeking more of a value as well, which has certainly been the case here. Both District 1 and the inner walls are substantially higher value than anywhere else. So,
yeah, and it seems like this is the smallest unit here, and then this is the mid-size, and this is the large size.
So the small ones are the little blue ones. You might have to zoom in a little more to see them. So those are your humble plots.
Yeah.
So you really have to zoom in.
That's as far as the map zoom goes.
Mine looks a little bit different when I zoom in, but yeah, okay. So each of those blue ones are your humble ones. The greenish coloured ones are your reasonable, which are like your mid-sized ones, and the purpley ones are your spacious, which are the biggest that you can get in there. The other colours that are around them are the boosts that each plot can have. So you'll see that there's some of them are touching like the red or the green to it.
There's blue over here.
Yep. So they're the different alchemica that's in the game. So you've got FUD, Keck, FOMO, and another one that I'm forgetting at the moment. So, hang on, there you go. It tells you on the side, and Alpha. So there's different rarities for each of them. So Keck being the rarest, and that was one thing when it did come to the incentivized auction that I was cautious about, was not speculating too heavy on it. And I was going more for the floor ones because, well, there was quite a fair bit of land that was there. There was no surety about what each of those boosts would actually represent in the game and how much it would be worth. And so I was seeing some of them, like people knew that Keck was the most scarce out of all of them. And so a plot that had the highest level of Keck, it was basically surrounded with Keck, was going for around 60,000 Ghost, which at the time Ghost was about $2.50. So you're talking, $150,000 for like a single plot of land. And it was a perfect example of why you should do your own research, because the developers never intended for people to speculate that hard on it. And they actually ended up putting a DAO proposal through to adjust how much impact each of the boosts had, because they basically the size of the boost that people were paying 150,000 for is about 5% of the average plot what it'll get anyway. So it makes a very small difference, but people paid a lot for that, and I think a lot of people got a bit burnt from that. But I was glad to see that the proposal didn't pass to change that, because where else can you sit there and not do your own research and speculate heavily, and then get wrecked and then get helped out because you didn't do your own research. So
Yeah, well, no, I'm glad to hear that that it didn't pass and it rewarded the people that did do their own research. But it just seems like this is a game with a lot of layers and elements and complications. So it really is one that be very, very cautious as you wade into this. But given that this has such complexity, and complexity also means that it's a higher likelihood of things possibly breaking or not going well, how did you first evaluate that Aavegotchi was a good use of time and money for you?
Uh, like I was saying before, been a slow evolution of the game, but they've had a bit of a roadmap in place, and like I said, a really avid DAO and a team to help drive that. And it's like nothing else I've seen in the crypto space, both in the team engagement and the DAO activity, and proposals going through. Like I've never seen a core proposal not meet a quorum, and things like that. So it's something that there's not a lot of in the space. And basically, when it first started, it was just staking rewards to earn raffle tickets so you could get some wearables. It was originally going to launch on Ethereum, but then the team decided to postpone that and make the move to Polygon, because the cost of keeping everything on chain on Ethereum would have been prohibitively expensive. Um, Especially, like I said, even things down to padding and stuff like that are all on chain. So that introduced some extra delays, and in that time, both the Ghost token and the Quick token, which is, for those that don't know, is the Quick Swap token, which is a Uniswap Polygon clone. They had gone up substantially, so it turned, what I initially anticipated spending about $2,000 into it, had gone up to about $25,000. So when the portals actually did launch, it was a very small part of it then. So I was like, oh, well, I was originally, looking at spending about 2,000 total in the game now, and I've got all this extra here. So all of a sudden, dropping $500 into it didn't seem like a whole lot. So basically that, and that and the launch being crazy as well. When it happened, some of the Matic nodes couldn't handle the traffic and went offline. And fortunately, I had my wallet set up to use a private node, so I was able to get my portals when other people weren't. And because I was able to get it, I got some low numbers, and decided that I wanted to keep them long term then for the resale value, and then jumped in and purchased some more, so that I had a blend of ones to actually use and ones that would be an investment in the future, because I wanted both a game and an investment. So
Understood. So you kind of benefit a little bit from having the right setup at the right time.
yeah. Yeah, and so after buying those extra few portals, then for personal use, I decided that I'd recoup the cost selling some of the other portals, and I did that within one portal sale. So it that worked out from an investment perspective really well. Really good with all the timings, and I don't think I could have timed it much better.
Well, I'm very happy to hear that it worked out so well for you. As new people join the community and look to buy either ghosts or land, I did see a comment in there from Maroon mentioning that he really wants to buy land in Gotchiverse. Is there a decision framework how you evaluate the ghosts or the locations of land to buy when new things come up for sale?
Uh, for me personally, like I said, after getting the low serial number portals, I decided I just wanted to get some for me to play with for me and my kids. So I decided to purchase another three more as the ones I was going to keep, which has then grown a bit like any family. um, and I knew that the haunt portals would be worth more in the future because they were the OGs of it. And if the game really took off, then people tend to put it quite a premium on that sort of thing. So that was when it first launched, that was my idea around that. For the land, I had a hard time trying to determine what value I'd bid it up to because, like I said, there was no data to go on. There's no other games like it. There was no prior sales and no active market on it for Aavegotchi. So I had just decided to go in with a certain amount in District 1 heavy and then gauge what the market was doing as a result of that. Like I said, with incentivized bidding, every time I got outbid, I made some money back from it. So I just kept pouring that into more and more. Bought again, split it between the inner walls and District 1 for investment, and then elsewhere I purchased some connected plots so that I could play with my kids and our ghosts on there. So
And what age do you think that they excuse me, need to be in order to actually play this? Because you said play with your kids, so I mean you're thinking ahead, unless they're able to play now.
So there's not much of a game at the moment. It's pretty much dressing up your Aavegotchis and padding them to boost basically the friendship level of them, which in turn has its own benefits. They had kind of a fashion show sort of thing. Like you got rewarded ghost token based on the rarity of your gotchi, and one of those things was how often you were padding it and things like that. So um, that part of it hasn't had too much, but from what I've seen in the test games, uh, or the test servers, uh, it's pretty easy for kids just to be able to mash the keyboard and walk around and do things. It's going to be a little bit more difficult, I think, to build on and read and interact with it. So I'd say if you've got a kid that you just want to let be involved in some way, if they can mash keyboard buttons, they can probably do it. And once they're of reading age, then they can probably start to play some of the other aspects of it.
Understood. Interesting. And when do you think this actual gameplay is going to be live?
So they're launching the land gameplay at the end of the month, um, or the first aspect of it. So yeah, a couple of weeks, and we'll be running around in our dressed up ghosts.
Okay. So you just walked us through your framework when you first got involved, but what advice would you give someone looking to get in now? How should they think about evaluating those ghosts in land? Should they be looking for closed portals, open portals? How should they look at to start evaluating if something's a good purchase or not?
I think it's harder now because the price of them have skyrocketed from when I got in. But it's also worth pointing out that there will be a completely free way to play with Aavegotchi too. So you don't have to, have a ghost or land if you just want to play the game. So that's good for user onboarding. But now that the market's pretty established, I feel a lot of it is just about weighing what you're willing to spend to get in and then going from there because the cheapest ghost now, you're looking at, probably about 800 US dollars to, buy the cheapest ghost that you can get. And the land, your cheapest one is probably about 400 US dollars. So, um, not incredibly cheap to get in. So it depends how like anything, it depends on how much people want to spend and whether they want to go for just the bare minimum to get in and do something with it, or whether they want some long-term value.
So in essence, there's no real easy answer.
No, especially because there's so many other factors to take into account between the statistics and locations and things like that. We need a whole hour just to talk about, all the different statistics and how they impact the gameplay and what they'll do in the future and how the wearables work and all that sort of thing. So, by the time you buy your base Aavegotchi, it's got nothing on. You probably want to add some clothing to it to, boost its stats and things like that. So it does start to add up.
So in essence, you can buy yourself into a superior being by buying the rarest of the wearables.
Yes, you can certainly do that, but then they're at the same time they're balancing that the weight that those wearables have, so that it doesn't become too pay to win heavy. So
Okay, so they're trying to balance it out so a large bag holder can't just come in and dominate day one.
pretty much. So all landowners, they're doing that as well in the sense of giving all landowners, regardless of their location or what they get from their land or how many boosts they have, they're basically doing UBI, like universal basic income, and so every day, every land parcel that you own will get a certain amount of it from that. And that helps to distribute it to everyone regardless of how much you hold. So
Okay, so I wasn't aware of the UBI, so that's an interesting development. Um, do we know when that goes live, and do we know what the base amount of UBI will be per plot?
I'm not sure if they had released the I think in the last release of the Gotchi verse Bible, it did mention how much each of them was, and I can't remember that off the top of my head. I'd have to look that up.
Okay.
Um, but I can drop some links in for that if people are interested in reading that.
Yeah, I think people would be interested in reading it. If nothing else, I will go find the latest version of the Bible, because given my finance background, if I'm seeing that there's a minimum stream of income coming back, I could view that as a perpetuity and then value it as such and establish a base level of valuation, and then start taking into account how close it is to the center and some of those other valuations, let's say some of those other things that affect the valuation.
And how many lands you have to buy to live off the UBI that it generates.
Well, I wasn't even getting to the point about living off the UBI. I was just talking about trying to establish a base level valuation for a given parcel.
Yeah. I think that's going to need the game to be live because the UBI that's giving isn't the ghost token, it's the in-game tokens from the Alchemica. And without an active marketplace and without that being traded yet, there's nothing to really kind of gauge what value that would be. But, a couple of weeks and that'll start to be a lot easier to be able to gauge.
Okay. Now, earlier you mentioned that there are a lot of statistics and it would take too long to go through them now, but could you mention offhand what some of them are? If you want to rank order them as far as what you think is important or not, be my guest. If not, I'll treat this as in no particular order, things that people need to be able to look at.
So in the Aavegotchis themselves, so in the ghosts, I'd say probably the rarity. So each ghost, when you go into it, it'll have a rarity score and a base rarity score, and then the rarity score that it has based on the wearables that boost that. Um, the rarity so far has mostly been in a ranking competition. So the more rare a Aavegotchi is, the more ghost you'd sit there and receive each time. So they actually just had one, I think about 4 or 5 days ago. a snapshot was done, and then they've got a curve that, depending on where you fall in that curve, you'll receive ghost for having a super rare Aavegotchi. In the land aspect, I'd put that down to location. If you're looking at it from an investment point, definitely the inner walls are much more sought after, and I think when the game expands in the future, it's going to be even more so. If you're just after anywhere just to play, anywhere in the Citadel is pretty much a safe bet at the moment, because you're not going to get attacked in there like you will out in the rest of the world when that releases.
Understood. So focus on rarity on the ghost, and then location, location, location on the real estate, or rather on the land.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So as if anyone that saw the metaverse land discussion I had a few months ago, everything that's old is new again. So it's still all about location in the metaverse. I'm kind of curious. So we mentioned that the DeFi aspects of the game and the game aspects have really sucked you in. But at the time that you were evaluating Aavegotchis, why them instead of something like Axes?
I'm not sure if you had it in the US, but I guess like the Crunchy or Soft Taco ad, why not both? I've got both Aavegotchi and Axie, so I did get into Axie a little bit later, so I don't have nearly as much invested as I do with Aavegotchi, but I do have a few dozen Axie and a few land there. And for both of them, I just see that gaming is a big untapped market in the NFT space, and I feel in the coming years that's going to explode. So I wanted to get exposure to those.
And going forward, do you have a view as to assessing Aavegotchi's pre-game relative to Axie's pre-game? Do you think they'll follow a similar path, or are there things here that are different that would lead it to have a different sort of outcome once the game goes live?
So if I was to go back like to the same sort of time frame in where each project was at the time, I feel like Aavegotchi is doing a lot better in the aspect that the team is very engaged with the community. Like they're constantly holding Discord and Twitter spaces. Like I said, the DAO is super active on there. There's a huge amount of discussion constantly going on, and the team takes all that on board and runs it as basically executes what the DAO decides on. It's not some sort of pseudo DAO that decides that it'll execute on that maybe, or on portions of it. Like if they put a core proposal out there, whatever the outcome is of that proposal is what they do. So whereas the Axie on the other side is more led by the developers, with less of that involvement from the community. So I feel from that aspect, it's a lot less engaging.
Okay. And given that guilds are a known quantity within Axes, are there any guilds forming or starting up within Aavegotchis?
There are. I'm not part of one yet. I'm not sure. It's again one of those things that's a bit early to determine what the best course of action is, because I do have a fair bit of land in there now. I don't know whether it would be better to join a guild and kind of have them manage that and the people, or whether to get more myself, or lease them out to friends and people in the community and things like that want to play. So at the moment, it's kind of undecided for me, but the guild portion is definitely a big portion of it. And I think in the third part of the Gotchi Bible, it goes into the guilds and guild channeling and that aspect a little more.
Okay. So in essence, the evolution is still a lot to come, and still a lot more to help decide. But if the community drives this one, it's probably, let's call it, it's not less certain, it's just more probably dynamic than an established roadmap at other projects led by a centralized team.
Yeah, so the team are definitely committed to long term. They've got assets locked up in the treasury for 10 or 20 years. So they're thinking really long term. And the whole plan is to do it over several chapters and acts within each chapter. So it's going to be a slowly evolving game. I guess, take something like World of Warcraft. You started with that initial game, and then they added on the expansions and that in the future as a bit of an afterthought. Whereas now they're going, well, rather than building this whole thing up front, let's do it over the course of 3 years, and we're going to release each year. We're going to release a certain amount of expansion to it and extend that gameplay through the story and the acts. So
Okay. And I remember you mentioned a couple weeks ago to me that there was a upcoming reveal of land traits and attributes of elements that could be mined, if I recall correctly. Has that been revealed, or am I misremembering something?
So that hasn't been revealed yet. That's to come soon. And yeah, that's again, it's using Chainlink VRF to prove randomness for every single plot. So that there's no accusations of manipulation or anything like that. And that's going to have a huge determination on the value of a lot of plots, because if people are paying $150,000 for one that has an extra 5% keck, imagine if your plot, instead of having the set amount, has an extra 80% more, because they have a variance. So they have an average amount, and it can either be down to 80% less or up 80% more from that. So you can imagine if you've got a large plot that's covered in keck, that's going to be worth a lot if people have paid 150,000 for 5% of that.
Um, all right. Since I know we're coming close to time, I'm going to quickly drop in here, and then I'll drop it into the stream text, the link to the main site where there's a lot of information available. It's probably the best place to start your descent down the rabbit hole, as it were. Um,
Which is exactly what it says there on the button.
yes, I did kind of say that on purpose. Um, the last thing I kind of want to ask before I then kind of drop to the trailer that you see I have a YouTube tab open is, given that all the functionality on this land is still being built out and we still don't have the reveals, and the gameplay is still evolving, are there any plans to enable plots to be of land to be rented out?
Yeah, so that's something that the team's already discussed and is something that is coming into play. They'll be implementing a renting feature into it, so you can allow others to harvest from your land, and then you can take a cut of what they harvest as a result of that. So that means, if you're time poor or you don't have enough Aavegotchis to farm all the land, if you happen to have more land than Aavegotchis, you can benefit from that.
Okay. So on that note, I'm going to quickly go over to this the cinematic reveal to give the community a bit of a view. Let me know if in stream text if you can hear the video.
I love when they released that trailer, because you got to see some of the things that we knew were coming, like the liquidators, which are those things with the giant tongues on there,
That's
which
rebranded
sorry, let me.
Metaverse push.
There we go. Sorry, YouTube autoplay.
Yeah. So you got to see some of the things, like the Citadel, the Great Portal in the middle, the Liquidators, all the things that have been spoken about, and up until recently haven't been able to really see much of. So I don't know, it got me pretty hyped having seen that, and I'm really looking forward to the end of the month when this comes out.
No, definitely looks exciting. I guess my one concern viewing that video is it seems to have high resolution, high production value, yet the ghosts, when you look at them, especially when you kind of come down here, looks to be a lot lower production value. And I know that that's something you and I have talked about in the past when you see promotional videos for games that look all sleek and delivered, and then the implementation is actually not, and what a letdown is. Any thoughts on that and the likelihood of that happening here?
So the game is going to be pixel based, like what you're seeing with the ghost. And in that trailer, you did get to see the ghosts were all pixel based as well.
Yep.
Whilst the portal and things like that were a little more detailed, it was designed to be a cinematic trailer. The game itself is pixel based and all based entirely out of the web browser. So it's not going to look like what a cinematic trailer is going to look, but I feel like with the amount of time that they've dedicated into the lore and checking in with what the community wants, that it's going to be that the graphics aren't like you don't have to have good graphics to make it a good game. If you've got good lore and story and gameplay to go with it. So I feel like what I've seen so far, that a lot of the story in that is going to be better than a lot of other games that I've seen try to pop up in the space and then kind of just disappear to obscurity. So, and I do see that someone had posted from the stress test in the server, in the stream text, a bit of an example of what it does look like.
Yeah, the reason I ask, and I'm going to push back a little bit, is if you have that sort of cinematic release and then the game is pixelated, I suspect you're going to have a few people that will join because of how sleek it looks, only to be disappointed when they actually get the game, when they actually open up the gameplay and see that it doesn't appear to be anything like the cinematic.
I guess that's where the free portion of it comes in really handy. That there's a lot of games like Axie and that up at the moment that if you want to play the game, you have to buy the Axies. Whilst you can do that with Aavegotchi, they're going to have a completely free way of being able to do it and accumulate assets in there as well. So it's also not something that they're pushing in all their promotional videos. It was just this one kind of hype trailer with in the lead up to the game launch. Everything else is as you see on the website. Like on the website, it doesn't promote any amazing graphics, next gen VR type stuff. It's you're seeing what you get. So
okay, well, this has been certainly an enlightening discussion today. I've learned a lot, and I hope that I've been able to convey some of the questions that would guide the community as they start exploring the Gotchiverse. I'm going to quickly pause and see if there are any questions that came in from the community. And if not, I will also take this opportunity to say, Justin, thank you very much for joining us today. I know that it is late where you are, and I and the community truly appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us.
the pleasure's all mine. And remember, this was all not financial advice, but it's definitely a game I'm hyped about. So,
well, just hearing you be hyped about it has gotten me hyped about it. And as Justin just said, everyone that listened in today, thank you very much. And this was not financial advice. This is just another installment of Whales NFA. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.